Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Big Data London webinar. Today, we're dealing with data governance and linking it to business goals. So I'm Andy Steed, Content Director at Big Data London, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Jonathan Robson of Precisely and John Paul Otte of Degroof Petercam. Welcome, guys. Yes, so these sessions are designed to be interactive, so please ask as many questions as you like, and we'll endeavour to answer them at the end of the session when we've got a bit of time allotted for Q&A. The question box is just under the video captions you're seeing there. If you lose the stream at any point, you shouldn't, but just in case, if you hit a refresh in the browser, you should jump straight back in. However, enough of that, and I'd like to pass over to our featured presenter, the first of our featured presenters today, Jonathan. Over to you, Jonathan.
Great, many thanks, Andy. So let me bring my slides up here. So first of all, just to introduce myself, my name's Jonathan Robson, and I'm a data governance manager with Precisely. I've spent the last few years working with our data governance customers, throughout Europe and also a little further afield as well. And really wanted to share with you today some of the insights that we've built up around that, how our customers have managed to make their data governance program successful, and some of the pitfalls that you may fall into along the way. So I'm going to talk about that from a more of a theoretical perspective, and then I'll hand over to Jean-Paul, who's going to talk about more practical examples and how he's implemented some of these learnings, rolling out data governance in his own organization. So first of all, I wanted to talk about, I say a typical data governance story. I mean, hopefully it's not typical, but wanted to talk about some of the things that can go wrong in a data governance program. So when we look at data in general, it's been a discipline that originally lived in IT, and then we've seen over the last few years how it's become more and more of a thing in its own right, and organizations can sometimes see data as being as this kind of nebulous blob, but are rightly saying, well, it should be a strategic asset and we want to leverage it, and so on. So as part of that, we need to understand much more clearly what our data assets are and what we can do with them. So hence there'll be some kind of inciting event, and a data governance program will get initiated. Off the back of that, we'll see, maybe a data team or a data governance team is spun up. They're tasked with putting this program in place. And one of the first things they'll be doing is saying, okay, well, what do we need to do here? What are our objectives? We need to get the business involved in this. So they'll go out to the business and start conversations with them. They'll be asking them about, definitions around data, what approval processes look like, ownership of data, who's responsible for it. And these users, they already spend their nights and weekends trying to deliver against their own set of goals. And they start asking the question, how does this help me do my job? Conversely, though, by setting up a data team, that can actually become the go-to place for every time there's problems and issues with data, and you find that the data governance team then starts finding itself trying to solve all the data problems and owning all of the data, needing more meetings with the business, both about their issues and also about what they're trying to achieve. And the business that users then start to say, well, this is sucking up all of our time. I'm just not going to go. And so the business loses interest. They stop attending meetings, and eventually the leadership say, I'm not seeing the return on this investment. We're going to deprioritize this. Everyone gets cold feet, and We've seen this, we've sometimes got involved with organizations that they're having their second go. They tried it, it didn't work. Nothing happens for 12 to 24 months, and then they take another look. And so fingers are burned, and that's a lost opportunity as well that time. So the rest of this session we want to talk about, well, how do you avoid that, and what are the benefits of taking more of a business first approach, and tying governance to business objectives. We've seen when you have a much more targeted approach that you'll have a much more accelerated rollout. If you're looking to upfront look at what you're trying to measure in terms of your impact, then you can measure the ROI and really demonstrate back to the business. And I think importantly, probably for a lot of people on this call who work in data functions, it's going to help you get reinvestment in your discipline, and spin up additional projects against data, and really move it to the forefront of how a business operates. So linking data governance programs to business goals. In terms of the goals that we're trying to achieve with data governance, we can look at I guess 3 main silos here. So we have data to minimize risk. In every organization, these things are kind of unavoidable. You have things such as GDPR and data protection and privacy that you need to manage. You're constantly on the lookout for fraud and people trying to game you through their data. And you've got regulatory compliance. So whatever business you're in, some are more heavily regulated than others, but there's typically some standards that you need to meet around reporting back to government agencies and so on. So we have a set of objectives around that. Data to deliver insights. So many organizations have analytics teams. They can be centralized, they can live out in the business units, but they're really looking at all the things we understand by analytics. So what customer retention rates, what does the breakdown of our sales by product look like? You might want to do some marketing attribution, so understand how well my marketing campaigns are performing, and deliver those insights across the business, both on a tactical basis and on a strategic basis. And then finally, we've got data to run the business. So we might be looking at objectives like optimizing our working capital, enhancing customer care, so that it's that investment gets optimized, facilitating and working through mergers and acquisitions, all kind of operational type of exercises. What we'll find though is when we start looking at the data that underpins these things, quite often the same data falls into multiple silos here. So we might be looking at protecting our customers' data, but then that same data is driving our 360 view of the customer for insights, and it's also helping us from an operational basis to enhance customer care. So the spark for this particular governing this particular set of data assets may come from one of these silos, but we want to be aware of how the data works across the entire business. So how do we drill down from there? So within these silos and with these objectives that that work across the silos, instead of going straight to data governance, we want to say, okay, what are we trying to achieve first? Okay, so what are our goals here? Let's try and list them out. And this is a short list, and you may end up with a much longer list. I want to understand who my stakeholders are related to those goals, and what am I trying to achieve? What's our aim around data governance and data management here? Once we understand those things, we can drill down to what's our data governance objective, And actually, more importantly, what are the capabilities that we need to support that objective? I think there's a real tendency in the market for organisations to say, we need to do data governance or we need a data catalog, and we think that involves this particular set of capabilities. So we'll go and buy one of those and implement those capabilities. But there's a lot of risk with that approach, in that unless you understand what you're trying to do from a business goal perspective, you may miss critical capabilities, you may be over investing in the wrong technologies, and so on. So we always recommend, even if you're in your program already, it makes sense to try and gather this information and really give direction to where you're going. So, if we drill into these, personalization of customer products and services, we'd have marketing, sales, and finance as stakeholders. We're looking at reducing churn, increasing our net promoter score, increasing repeat purchases. But then from a data governance objective, we want a common view of trusted data or assets. And, we need these capabilities to support that. So catalog, data lineage, we want full approval workflows around access to data, and we want data integrity rules so that we really understand, that the data we're working with is fit for purpose. We can drill down another level from here as well, from the data governance objective into some kind of more tangible outcomes. So when we look at this, we talk about painkillers and vitamins, and I guess for me, if I was looking at improving my overall health, then there's lots of things I can do, and I understand that fairly well. But I can't go to the gym if I've got a bad shoulder. So first of all, we may need to work through the painkillers for the business. We want to centralize the collection of our customer data. We want to understand where our data comes from, where it's going to. We want to understand ownership of the data, so who's responsible for it, and who's certified to use it. And we may not have a very good view on the quality of it, so we want to understand that as well, and make that and surface that and make it accessible to everyone. Once we've gone through that, we can then look at some of the vitamins, some of the bonuses that we can wrap around this. So we may be able to do impact analysis on our data so that we understand not what it's linked to for our top of mind objective, but what it links to across the business and the impact it has elsewhere, as that may influence our thinking about it. We may want to start automating some things relating to data, such as granting access to data at source. We might want to automate some of the quality monitoring, so that if there's a data quality issue, the first time you know about it isn't someone seeing a problem on a report, but it gets caught much earlier in the cycle, surfaced in the data governance environment, and can get worked through and dealt with appropriately. So from a very high level, we've gone from some data governance goals through objectives and capabilities down to what are the list of outcomes we're trying to achieve. The next thing to look at is prioritizing what matters. So, not all data is created equal. We find around 5% of data maybe drives 95% of decision making when you look at all the data in your organization. And it's very important to understand that you don't have to govern all of your data. You probably don't even have to govern half of it. And it's easy to get sucked into that direction. But again, what we want to do is say, okay, when we look at our goals and objectives here, what are the key things that are being driven by what is the key data that underpins that? So with customer data, obviously we can talk about name and address and email address, and then depending on your business, you may have another 15 to 50 critical data attributes that underpin that. So we suggest very strongly you focus on what's important around your data, link it to your use cases, and build out there. That's going to let you deliver value very early on in a governance program and get that mind share and reinvestment. In terms of how this translates to the business itself, I think if we look at this, almost with a kind of military view, you have strategic teams in a business. This can be the C-level teams or the teams at the top of each organization, and they're taking a 12, 24, 60-month view on the business. They're looking at key business goals, they're looking at KPIs and metrics, strategic programs, where's the business going, and so on. We have operational teams who are responsible for the day-to-day running of the business, so might be driven by some of the tactical objectives, so new product development, planning, sourcing, manufacturing, and so on. And at a tactical level around data, you have those teams. So it could be very much IT focused. So I want to understand the data in all my systems, how it all relates to each other, so I can facilitate migrations to new systems, rationalization of the estate, and so on. I think what we say is, the use cases, we talk about them being top down for strategic, bottom up for tactical, and middle out for operational. So you need to address all of these things when you're embarking on a data governance program. You want to address all sets of stakeholders here. Additionally, for each one, you want to look at their value metrics. So what are the things that are important to them, and how is my data governance program going to support those? So around KPIs, it might be in terms of how available are they? If they could get their key KPIs once a quarter before, and you can now surface them on a weekly basis as a result of a well-run data governance initiative, that's something you can measure and something you can communicate back to the business. And then so on and so forth at the other levels around data quality, data errors and rework at an operational level, and at a tactical level, understanding more about my completeness and volume and just the scale of my data. In terms of the story then, and this is where I'd come back to, maybe if I look at it from a health and wellness perspective, there's lots of things I can do, so I can eat well, I can get good rest, I can go to the gym, and I want to do all these things on a repeatable basis. Now, if I don't know anything about health, then I'm going to have the question of why on earth am I doing these things? Going to the gym hurts. I like eating nice food, and so on. And so what this gives us is a kind of framework for communicating why we do some of the things in data governance back to the business. So we're cataloging supplier data assets. We've defined our critical data elements for managing our customers. We've got alignment across the business on business policies and key rules. And we've worked hard to increase our data quality. And what this is going to lead to, is let me build this again. Apologize. All right, that surprised me. There we go. Is more strategic outcomes. So as a result of doing these things, we are going to be able to tie these activities to decreasing our customer onboarding process cycles and so on. So what I want to do before I hand it over to John Paul, just leave you with some some takeaways. So again, data governance, very easy to get sucked into. Okay, we want to do data governance. Let's get some tools and build a team and off we go. Very important, not only to understand why you're doing it, but actually having a framework to communicate that back to the business so that you get buy-in and stakeholder involvement and hopefully lots more investment down the line. We want to have the capabilities serve both as painkillers and vitamins to both protect and grow the business. Really important to work across all three areas, top-down use cases, bottom-up use cases, and middle-out use cases, strategic, tactical, and operational. And you want to have your metrics in there. So you want to be able to quantify and communicate the business impact these programs are having. Again, they're very important. They're very new for a lot of people. Data governance maybe didn't mean so much to people 5 years ago, except out of regulatory compliance. But now it really does apply to all areas of business and making data at the heart of how we drive the business forwards. So I will leave it there. I've talked more about the theoretical side of this. Jean-Paul is someone who's actually done all of these things. So Jean-Paul, I will hand over to you and let you take our audience through your journey.
Thank you, Jonathan. What you explained concerning linking data governance and business goals is certainly, it really makes sense, in fact. And I'm convinced this is really a key success factor when you want to implement this change in the organization to make people manage data as an asset. Now, having said that, the challenge remains to really make it happen, I would say, and also to sustain it in the longer term, which is not so obvious. But it is my ambition for Degroof Petercam in my role of Chief Data Officer. And so first of all, I will tell a few words about our company. So we are a financial institution headquartered in Belgium. And as you see, we are doing four main businesses: private banking for 42%, as you see, asset management, asset services, and investment banking. So complementary businesses, so that allows us some cross-fertilization and things like that also. We are privately held, and we are there from 150 years already in Belgium. A little less than 1.5 thousand employees, 84 billion euro on assets under management, and we are present in the 8 countries in Europe. So different type of customers also because of our different businesses. So a lot of data, of course. Also that the financial institutions are also highly regulated, so a lot of need to be transparent also in terms of data management and etc. So I joined this organization a little more than 1 year ago, beginning of 2021. And what I presented to the board in terms of objectives, let's say, were this one. So first of all, ensure trusted and governed data. So this is all about what Jonathan told, deploy data governance framework within the organization with the processes, data management, data quality, monitoring process, and continuous improvement, but also putting in place roles and responsibilities to to manage it, and a supporting platform to support all these processes and policies, etc. So this is about data governance. But I think, and Jonathan was talking about the business IT collaboration, or the link between business and IT, and it's important to also to let's say keep IT aligned with the data requirements of the business, and we do it through the translation of all the definitions and the rules that are defined in the data governance framework by the business. In fact, translate it into a business information model that will be the basis for all IT downstream IT implementation, like data integration patterns, like data marts, like whatever usage, IT usage they want to implement. So this is something that I think is important also, because if you just do data governance and that you don't have the IT, let's say, in line with that, you will lose something, and potentially you will frustrate the business guys who are doing a big effort to define their requirements, in fact. And last but not least, and I think it's also very, very important, because when you talk about data governance to the board, often it is an abstract thing for them often. Even if you talk about data quality, okay, they understand, but at the end of the day, what they want to see is what can we do with the data. So it's important that we have also a culture in the organization to have the best usage of the data in terms of data visualization, decision making, etc. So we act there as a center of excellence, center of competence to, let's say, to empower, to improve the maturity of business user in terms of data visualization and analysis. So these are the three, let's say, objectives that are, of course, complementary. But I think that's important, not to focus only on data governance and data quality, and to really have IT on board it on one side and show the value of the data on the other side. So if we come back to data governance itself, because it's the subject of this webinar, we put some guiding principles in this context. The first one you see is business value. So what we want to do, and we come back there to the linking data governance with business goals. Business value meaning for us focusing on critical data. And what is critical data? Critical data is data that has been identified as key to achieve a specific business objective on one side, or on the other side, a data that has a high impact on risk mitigation, meaning that if the data is of poor quality, for example, a critical business process could suffer from it, and you could have some operational risk linked to that, and of course the data that are under the compliance and the regulatory compliance. Also, an important principle is the fact that data governance should not be considered as a project with a start and an end. I know everybody knows it, but it's something that is not so easy to explain to people. So it's important that you, from the start, that you consider the activities behind data governance as a business as usual activities. You integrate it really in the business as usual. and we do it with a business drive, with the key role of data stewards that will enter a continuous improvement process to help the business grow in maturity, and finally to be the ambassador of our strategy. But of course, the data steward at a certain moment cannot act on everything. He needs to be empowered also and sponsored by the top management. So we have put in place a data management committee, which is really playing an active role in prioritizing, defining the priorities in terms of data initiatives, meaning which are the critical data I have to work on now, I have to govern, I have to improve. And this should be linked to a business objective. I will come to that later on. But this data management committee is composed by the let's say senior manager of the different business lines, support functions also, and together with the data protection officer, who is part of the data management committee, and also the chief information security officer. So we are working together in a data management committee that is finally the steering committee of the data governance program. So priority of business of a data initiative, assignment of the different data stewards that will work on these different data initiatives, and also sponsorship of the improvement solutions that are identified by the data steward to tackle issues and to improve the situation. And finally, transversality, which is obvious. So how does it work? It's quite simple. We have this strategic ambition. Oh, this is not my last slide, unfortunately, but okay. It's not so important. But you have these business objectives here, and the data management committee, from these business roadmap and business objective and strategic ambition, we discuss together to define the priorities in terms of data. So finally, the data management committee is putting in place a kind of data roadmap and assigning data stewards by data subject, let's say, that are present in this roadmap. So as soon as we have validated the data initiative, that we have one of the key message I gave to the data governance committee is that the data initiative must be linked to a business objective and strategic ambition. So we will not start something and we will not assign a data steward if the link with the business objective is not clearly identified. So from this validation, we launched the data initiative with the data steward who will act as the driver of this continuous improvement process. We will come to that. And by the time, of course, over time, the number of the data stewards will increase, the number of data initiatives will cover more and more subjects in the organization, and we will spread in the organization the best practices that we are promoting. So we are in a kind of hybrid mode where the chief data office is acting as a center of competence with the relays in the business through the data stewards, the data owners also, and the IT custodian that are more for the application. But we'll see it later on. So let's look at what is the data steward doing. So this is the continuous improvement process that he is applying, and it start by defining what are we talking about. So from this business objective, what are the critical data, and let's define it correctly. Let's also define what are the quality criteria I need for this data, and map this data in what is the importance of this data towards business processes, towards the strategic ambitions, the business objective, towards also the regulatory framework. So this is the define phase. And what you see at the right is really the repository, the knowledge base that we built with the work of the data steward over time. So we built first the business glossary and definitions, etc. The link with the data quality, where you first you identify or you define the quality rule linked to the term or the concept or whatever, and the link to the business process. Then then there is the step discover, where you will link the business view, the business term, business concept with the, let's say, IT landscape, which application is using or managing this term, in which database, in which column of the database, and then we are talking about the technical metadata that is harvested in this repository. So we make the link between the term and the way it is implemented in the systems in the IT landscape. And also at that moment, if you have made this link, we at the CDO office, we implement the data quality check that is verifying the quality rule that has been defined by the data steward, and the data steward at a certain moment can monitor it, identify some issue, because it's not compliant, and this is the discover phase. Now, having linked the data, the term, for example, with business processes on one side and on data initiative on the other side, you can assess the importance of an issue. In fact, assess the risk you have with this data quality problem or data accessibility problem or whatever the issue you have. It's a data issue you have. And then you have an assessment of the risk, and you identify the role of the data steward, and the job of the data steward is really to search for the root cause of the problem. Why do I have this problem? Is it a problem of process? Is it a problem of people that doesn't understand what the meaning of the data, for example, or is it a application technology problem? So the root cause is important. To the data steward has to find a root cause before identify potential solution. So all these artifacts, let's say, that are behind this process, are materialized in this repository at the right. So you have all the history of the data and really a 360 view on the data. The idea is really to build a one-stop shopping for data for anyone having a question on data. So after having identified the improvement, possible improvement to tackle the root cause, then we go up to the data management committee to validate these solutions and to sponsor this solution and to make it happen also in their different departments. So that's where really the transversality happens, because a data steward is more on the usage of the data. He needs a certain quality of the data for its usage and for a business goal. And then the root cause is potentially really in another business area, from another business area, and so they have to talk together and they have to agree together on the solution that has to be put in place. And then hopefully the improvement initiatives are launched, and of course, last but not least, you have to monitor and control the evolution of the data quality, of the data governance also over time. So this is let's say, a common sense process. But the fact is that so we insist on linking and keeping this link with the business value, and to involve the data stewards. I strongly believe that the first way to, or the first the first way to involve them is to talk about data quality. So because they understand it, because if they care about if data are important for them in their business, data quality is really a subject where he will be motivated to work with us. And this is a starting point. We start with data quality, and you see that this process is really data quality focused, let's say. So after 1 year, having started really somewhere to deploy somewhere in April, so it's not 1 year, in fact, we have today 20 data stewards that are working day to day with this framework. We have, as you see, the data management committee with 12 people, IT custodians. So this is really a collaborative platform that we have put in place in order to be able to have this 360 view around data. So we have some architects that are working also in the platform, managing the list of application and the inventory of the application. We have also the business process owners and experts that access that keep their business process documentation up to date in the platform. So this is really a collaborative platform, data centric, meaning that everybody who's collaborating in this platform finally is in a mindset of understanding that data is important, in fact, because data is always at the center. And so you see here the evolution in terms of number of concept terms, metrics, etc. So you see that it's growing. This is the last figure shows the data quality rules that have been implemented. You see the evolution, and you see also the data quality score. And in orange, on the top right figure, you see what we call the data governance score, meaning the completeness of the documentation of the assets that are defined in the repository. So this is where we are, and I would say I'm quite happy to have already 20 data stewards on board, and to keep them, and that's the difficulty. That's a real challenge, to keep them on critical data, on subjects that are really bringing business value, because they like it. They like to improve. They like the way we are working. And sometimes, they would like to clean some data, but when you look at this data, or not clean some data, but govern some data, which are not so critical. So we have to always to keep this focus on business value. But they are really motivated, and they enjoy it. So that's a culture that is put in place in the organization. And that's what I wanted to explain to you. And of course, Jonathan and myself, we are open for your questions.
Thank you, John Paul. I'll return it to a big screen. Here we go. Just before I ask some questions, I give you 10 seconds to type a few more, and thank you for everyone who sent something already. Just wanted to make you aware of some attachments to this webinar. Next to the question box, you'll see an attachment box. There's some useful resources from Precisely, some of which Jonathan mentioned in this presentation. There's also the Big Data London YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to, and it will give you a little notification when there's new videos. There's new videos going on there all the time, and some links to some further webinars that we're doing in the next couple of months. So we've got a couple of questions, and I had a question actually about data stewards, as for you, obviously, John Paul. I'll try and work in the audience questions first before I satisfy my own curiosity. The first one is, are the data stewards full time? Is that their one and only job? And if not, how do you get their managers or the people who are responsible for looking after them allocate the adequate amount of time for them to do this sort of data stewardship as well as their day job?
Yeah. No, this is not a full-time job. This is a role that people place in the together with their business activities. How do I have the commitment of the line management to allow to give the time necessary to the data steward? They are part of the data management committee, these line managers, and so they have to commit themselves in the data management committee together with the committee to allow the guys to spend part of their time. I'm always requesting 20% of their time at the beginning, but sometimes it grows, and that's the good news. Sometimes we have some problems with the data steward that after some weeks or some say, okay, this is not for me. I don't understand it. I'm not motivated. But one important thing, and I think it's linked to another question: what is the profile of a good data steward, or you have seen that we had our 3 objectives, and one of them was the data visualization, etc. So we try to combine as much as possible the role of power user, BI power user, or data analyst on business side with data stewardship, and that's really natural for them to combine these 2 roles. And for the rest, we do each time now in the organization where a business department wants to hire a data analyst or something like that. I'm part of the recruitment, and we assess that this guy will also play the role of data steward. So this is not always easy, but you need some commitment of the data management committee members on one side, and trying to find the people that are that uses data, in fact, who uses data in their work. That's what I can say.
Perfect. So my follow-up question, I think you've answered already, but I was going to say, do the data stewards have any kind of data governance background a lot of the time, or are they more generalists, and more generalist business analysis, or
more generalist, but with an interest in data? And in data analysis or data visualization for some of them, or and some let's say interest in data and more technical stuff.
Right. We may have to come back to this, because obviously the way you've structured the committee and the stewards has obviously intrigued people, because there's a few questions here. I think we've covered a lot of the questions in your answer, but I'll have a scroll through while Jonathan answers this next one. You mentioned about data governance and increased focus on it, and link it to business goals and stuff. It's one of those things that seems to suddenly be really popular, and lots of people are discussing, and what do you think it is over the last couple of years? Obviously, there's been little pockets of interest when certain regulations have come out and stuff like that, but it seems to be an actually sustained conversation that's happening in data circles a lot now. Data governance is an important topic. What do you think's changed in people's minds that's kind of
I think there's a couple of things, so I think if we were to focus just on analytics for a second, for a long time, it was difficult to set up technologies to do those things. Building a data warehouse was hard and expensive, and very often you'd have IT kind of not just controlling the data, but also how you're allowed to analyze the data. And the technologies just didn't really exist to push much beyond that. I think over the last 10 years, we've seen cloud has just taken off, and some of the big data technologies that's enabled has really come on the back of that. And so we saw this push kind of 10 years ago to say, oh, we have big data now, we're going to start collecting everything. And you've moved from data just being archived once it was no longer current to pretty much everything being online and available all the time. Okay, so first of all, you have all that access to data, and so then you had the kind of push to say, well, how are we going to deliver value out of all of this? And that's where you've seen offices of data start spinning up. I think initially, there was a lot of push around, well, let's just catalog everything we have. But I think, as the office of data has matured, governance has become a much more strategic thing. When I speak to chief data officers, it's typically these days a top two objective. I think 3 years ago, the top thing would be, how do we get from our existing architecture to a modern cloud architecture? And that journey's become much better defined now. So now it is, how am I really going to deliver the value out of that? And data governance kind of really underpins that whole journey.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We thank you everybody for your questions. I don't think we're going to get through all of them, but do keep sending them in. I'm going to go back to you again, John Paul, about data literacy, something you mentioned in your presentation. It's something again that's mentioned a lot, and obviously to have in a highly regulated market such as yourself, and with a defined team with defined roles, it's presumably very important. I'm guessing that at this moment in time, you would consider data literacy in your company good. It would have to be. Have you got any advice for people that to improve this data literacy company-wide? Because to implement a complex governance solution, you need everybody on board. You need people to understand, etc.
Yeah.
So anything you did in the early days.
Yeah. Again, what I was talking about, this one-stop shopping for data, is important. That you have somewhere a consolidated view of the data landscape in the organization, where people can ask for definitions. What are we talking about here? But also about the level of quality of the data they are using in their jobs. In fact, that's one. But I think, and this will be a focus for this year for us, is communication. Of course, is key, and promotion is key. So we have to promote the success we have in terms of, for example, we had a dashboard where data were not of quality, and we have improved it. And look, we are taking better decision now. And all these, let's say, success stories, also the testimonial of the data stewards, not in terms of their work, but the objective of their work, bringing value to business objective, is something important. So communication, promotion is really, really important. But on top of them, I strongly believe in this one-stop shopping area where all people are collaborating, because when people can access this one-stop shopping, they can also make some comment, they can collaborate to improve the knowledge around data. And that's all about data literacy, I would say.
Perfect. Well, I'm hoping that answer would have helped the person who asked what's going to have to be our last question, I think, unfortunately, to Jonathan. It's about first steps, really. They've mentioned a non-profit organisation, so I imagine it's maybe a less regulated company. What's the best first steps for people? Either people who just haven't been in this world before, or like you say in your presentation, who maybe took a couple of steps in a few years ago, then have stepped back for a little while because it didn't work out first time. Where should people be looking?
Yeah, so I mean, I think my view would be that none of this, and whether it's non-profit or otherwise, none of this happens without the appropriate sponsorship. So if someone in an organization has a view that data governance can deliver value, the first step is to be able to articulate that to people that matter and say, these are the problems we see, and this is how we think we can solve them by working better with data. So I know we my slides kind of went through the framework at a fairly high level, but most organizations have data issues and treat them as part of daily life or business as usual. However, it is possible to do two things. When it comes back to the painkillers and vitamins, can you reduce that pain, and can you deliver additional value? And I think up front you need to understand and be able to articulate those, and once you can do that, you can go and start looking at what you can do around data governance in general. What I would say is it's something that's it's kind of difficult to start just in one business area or do it in a limited way, to really adopt it. It's got to be kind of cultural across an organization, because data lives in the organization, and that's where the ownership and stewardship needs to be. So it's I'm not sure how helpful an answer that is. It's not the easiest thing to do, and it certainly involves mind share more than anything else.
I'm sure data is a value for non-profit organization also.
Yeah, of course.
And for example, non-profit organization can have subsidy money from a donator and things like that, for example. But this donator wants to know what is done with their money also. So you have to make it transparent where this money is spent and things like that. And this is all about data. So I'm sure there are topics in non-profit organization where the value of the data is obvious.
Perfect. Well, I tell you what, we probably could do a second webinar where we cover all the questions. Thank you so much for sending them in. I'm sorry for anyone we didn't get to. We'll answer them directly after the session. But unfortunately, we have come to the end of the time now. I'd just like to say thank you very much, Jonathan and John Paul. Really enjoyed the session. Great presentation and a great chat afterwards. And yes, with that, we will bid you farewell. So thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Andy.
Bye.
Bye now.